Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele, and I will be your nerd today, and any other day that you decide to click on one of my fun little shows. Let's just jump in to the week in Bryan, because it's been a great week. Lots of amazing Essence 20 work being done on multiple projects. I've been all over the place, working on adventure, making stat blocks, putting Essence 20 statistics to some of my favorite characters from a license that we have yet to put out yet. It's been great. It's been fantastic. Got a bunch of painting commission stuff done, including something I get to show you a little later. Yeah, it's just been great. I'm slugging away on Warzone Eternal stuff, which we'll obviously talk about later on. You saw the thumbnail. Yeah, no, it's been a really good week. I will apologize ahead of time if you happen to hear a bunch of construction noise. Again, for the next few months, the road that my house is on, the highway that my house is on, is being completely dug up and redone, new storm drains being widened, the whole 9 yards. And what this means is occasionally there are the beeping sound of construction vehicles out in front of my house, backing up. Sometimes I may even get to hear or feel them drop tons of concrete. It's impressive, let me tell you. It's a big deal. Let's see, other than that, other work stuff, yeah, that's really it. I mean, again, my workload is kind of focused down to effectively Warzone and Renegade, and then some painting, and that's really all I've been doing, which is awesome. I have been, I'm very happy, professionally speaking. Personally speaking, I still have not gotten past 60 pounds lost. I haven't quite rounded that 60 number yet. Working on it, but I'm still happy. I'm not backsliding, and that's what's important as far as I'm concerned. The convention schedule is starting to gel as far as for the rest of the year. I know a few shows that I'm definitely going to be at, and we'll talk about them more closer to when we get there. Here very shortly, I have an awesome video planned to record with my employer and colleague Alex over at Resnova, doing an Ask Me Anything video about the upcoming Kickstarter for Warzone Eternal. Speaking of which, the Remind Me landing page, I will put the link in the description of this video so you can take a look at it. Yeah, so playing games, got to play a little, I played in the Waking Realms D&D game where I'm that cat monk, where I said that it was going to be a tough fight. I wasn't kidding, and the whole session was fighting, and we're still not done. We actually had to stop the session kind of mid-combat because it was getting too late for some of us that had to work the next day and such. But it was is brutal. My character ran up some stairs and smashed through a door to find this big scary bat vampire ghoul thing, which sucked. No pun intended. I did end up getting to destroy that, but there's a bunch of, I think they're charmed, either charmed or enthralled or something. A bunch of city guards and mercenaries that are in that room too. And when we ended the game last, I was really having to debate making a little tactical withdrawal, getting the heck out of there. Because I'm getting real low on hit points, and I know our healer's like a room and a half away from where I'm at. So we'll see. We get to play that again this weekend and see how that pans out. Hopefully I will be okay, and I will not be a corpse the next time when I talk to you about them. I hope. Yeah, aside from that, it is kind of full steam ahead on everything else. We're getting closer. It's now officially less than a month from when the Kickstarter launches. Kickstarter is going to launch on May 17th. It is just over a month from Satine's role-playing game or role-playing cruise that Natalie and I will be taking, which I'm sure I'll devote an entire video to talking about that at some point. Yeah, so no, it's just good stuff. It's just good stuff. So I do want to say that for the next, probably at least through the next month, I would assume most of these videos are going to be Warzone related. Not just because we have the Kickstarter coming, but because this channel is going to be one of the primary ways that we get that we distribute video material for the fans of the Kickstarter. So my videos are going to get spread around a lot more, or at least segments from these videos are probably going to get spread around a lot more, which is good. More exposure for the channel, more exposure for the Kickstarter. All good things. I mean, I can't. They're great. It's all good things. So, today's topic, the actual topic of the day, to kind of kick off some of this, kind of kick off the Warzone section, the Warzone Eternal section, is I wanted to give a quick rundown on kind of the theme and I won't say play style, but you'd probably be able to get a good concept of how they play or how they're supposed to be playing, based off of a faction breakdown. Breakdown. That's the official faction breakdown song. I don't know. So we will obviously be saying something on the AMA for the Kickstarter, but it is something to make note of. That it is something to make note of that the Kickstarter for Warzone Eternal, for the Kickstarter for Warzone Eternal, is going to be it's not every faction for the game, obviously, because we Resnova is a small company. They really, really want to make sure that we really want to make sure. I keep forgetting that I'm technically an employee of the company. We really want to make sure that the game has solid footing before we expand too far. And one way for a small company to, frankly, to kill itself and lose the license is giving away too much, starting things off enormous and then not having anywhere to grow to. So our Kickstarter focuses on the mega corporations, and one of the evil, other extra dimensional demonic sub factions of the Dark Legion. With the addition of other apostles, the Brotherhood / Cartel of Man, and potentially more as time progresses. But initially, we are talking about the opening, the opening to be very specifically the mega corporations, the main players in the battles of the story, the corporate wars, obviously the corporations. So I've gone through the rough cut. I'm not going to go through the whole history again, but basically Warzone is a game about humanity's greed, and the miniature game aspect is elite forces, small elite forces doing tactical missions to either strengthen or weaken the opposition, the opposing forces, either weaken the opposing forces or strengthen your position for your faction within the confines of the Mutant Chronicles universe. Sometimes that means being manipulated by the good guys. Sometimes that means being manipulated by the bad guys. Sometimes it means straight up working for the bad guys or the good guys, depending on where your stance might lie. But as far as the factions themselves go, you've got primarily three splits, plus a fourth little weirdo. The three main splits, you've got the mega corporations, the corporate factions, and those are going to be basically the corporations and conglomerates that have gotten so big and so powerful that they are effectively governments of their own. And they control territory. But we're talking like if like Amazon bought the Western Seaboard. That's not that they don't own almost everything anyway, but that's or like suddenly Disney declares that they are going to just own Florida. Well, we would go, that seems weird. And then if they started putting out legitimate rules and laws, and there's the Mouse Patrol, their own actual military or whatever. That's kind of what these mega corporations are. They're almost like countries that are defined by who they work for rather than where they are. And spatial territory is just as important as the bottom line. So it's cool. It's a neat setup. And what it does is it creates kind of lines between these different companies, these different mega corporations, as to what they focus on, what's their thought process when it comes to what's important in how they do business, the territories they control, and on top of that, their personal security and military forces, like their corporate militaries, what's important to them, and sometimes that is just as defined by the territories. When I start getting into the factions, I'll explain a little bit about that. But that's the concept behind why these corporations are so different. Effectively, they're nations in and of themselves, except not nations defined by a particular place, but instead a particular employment and asset management system kind of thing. The second main division is the Dark Symmetry, the Dark Legion, if you will. The Dark Legion is the army that serves the Dark Symmetry. The Dark Symmetry is basically evil math, is algebra that makes holes in dimensions, and it is as tangible and real as any other concept of a greater evil that can literally corrupt you on a physical level. And the servants of the direct servants of the Dark Symmetry are the Dark Apostles. You're gonna hear dark a lot. There's a very big theme of light versus dark in the Mutant Chronicles. The Dark Apostles, there are 5 Dark Apostles. Each one represents a particular kind of aspect of the Dark Symmetry, and I'll get a little further into those, as we go. But that's what defines the different types of army within the Dark Legion. The Dark Legion as a whole are just this monstrous force that rises up in the shadows through secret cults and clandestine organizations, and then suddenly, bam! You've got this black metal dark citadel rises up out of your territory, and then bam! You've got a demon problem. That's kind of how the Dark Symmetry works. But each one of those different apostles has a different way of handling things, which is also reflected in their military forces that will come to the table in Warzone Eternal. The third kind of split, that's and arguably one of the most important, is the Brotherhood / Cartel of Man, and what this is the saviors in the dark. Basically, these are legitimate servants of mankind. Like they don't care what corporation you work for. They don't care what territory you're in. Their job, their job and their role in existence is to fight against the darkness. So they are there to help the corporations. They are there to help mankind push against the influence of the dark symmetry, and hopefully, eventually, defeat it and seal it back up in its nasty planet once again. But obviously, for the purposes of a war game where we don't want you to win and then suddenly no longer have access to 5 factions, that's more of a long-term epic kind of goal. The Brotherhood, so the 2 pieces of this kind of the Agents of Light. The Brotherhood is a super elite faction of faithful warriors that are willing to serve the Cardinal, who is the leader of the Brotherhood, and several different roles within the Brotherhood exist to serve as basically like advisors to other areas of humanity. So they leave, Brotherhood controlled space, Brotherhood controlled territories, and go and help the mega corporations as a direct level. Now, similar to some other stories you might have heard, some of these advisor roles are terrifying. Like nobody wants an inquisitor to show up and say, "I think you might have a problem." Nobody's real happy about a mortificator appearing in your midst and saying, "I'm here to do the Cardinal's work," because that could mean that someone here is a traitor. It could mean that they have reason to believe that the dark symmetry is influencing people. And they may very well deal with it harshly. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, so the Brotherhood is definitely a spiritual center and a philosophical army of fighting against the darkness. The Cartel, which works hand in hand with the Brotherhood, and the mega corporations as a whole to defend humanity, is more of a political organization than a spiritual one. Made up of cartel agents and doom troopers, which are effectively people who have signed their name on the bottom line to serve until death against humanity's foes. These are like a hyper-militarized, almost like a CIA. They are an agency devoted to the strengthening of mankind, and similar to the Brotherhood, they go where they're needed. They deal with the influence of the dark symmetry, but unlike the Brotherhood, which have their roots in the art of the light and the Cardinal's philosophies and such, the Cartel answers to a council made up of management members from the corporations. It's more of a heavily armed and armored United Nations than it is a spiritual weapon. But those two things, the Brotherhood and the Cartel of Man, kind of fall into the same category of greater factions because they come from everywhere. They kind of get drawn from different areas, and their whole purpose is to go to where they are needed amongst the other soldiers. We'll talk about that when we get into the faction breakdown. And then the last thing I mentioned, there was like a weird thing. There are still people left behind on the evacuated, poisoned Earth of the Mutant Chronicles, the Lost Tribes of Eden. And while not really full-fledged factions of their own, like full, massive armies and rockets and to fight out in the stars, They do have a lot of interaction with the corporations, and in some cases, some Dark Legion and Brotherhood ties. But they have a very, very distinct flavor between the four of them, and the how they interact with the basically a dead world around them. The Earth is almost inhospitable. It's just a terrible, terrible place. It's been ravaged of its natural resources, poisoned by pollution. It's just a nasty, nasty place. And these guys, these lost tribes, they manage to eke out their existence and still, sign up to help where they can. Occasionally, you might see some leave Earth because of one of the corporations, like takes them off planet. They're very, very cool. Absolutely a super, super minor player in the greater scheme of the Mutant Chronicles. But they do exist. They are a thing. And the hopes are that they will receive some love at some point. But the main properties of the Kickstarter, the people that we are dealing with, are the primary 6. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 corporations. God, I don't know why I was thinking 6. Oh, because I know I was thinking 6. Ignore that. So the mega corporations, all of which will have representation in the Kickstarter initially, is Capital, Bauhaus, Mishima, Imperial, and Cybertronic. Now, each one of these factions is their own thing. They are definitely the mega corporation factions of mankind, and they all kind of have their own morality, their own setup, and it reflects in their forces. So Capital is, when you look at them, a lot of the older Capital art, the older art and the older models and stuff, they definitely have a go America, baseball hats, football helmets, a stereotypical view of American culture, but when it comes to like the actual writing of it, they are a democratic union as far as a corporation goes, and they are dedicated to dealing with a problem quickly, succinctly, and definitely, and like put a pin in the end of it. And what that does, what that reflects on, is capital forces tend to be very fast assault. Like they want to get where they're going, lay down the firepower they need to lay down, do their job, and get out. They are one of the most mobile, like tactically mobile armies. They use a lot of air deployment, a lot of fast skimmers and things in the narrative. They've got one of the best air forces in all of the Mutant Chronicles. And in Warzone, you will see devoted soldiers, warriors that are they're willing to fight for their free corporation. They work for this corporation, but they are proud and almost like patriotic to do so. That's not to say that they're crazy zealots or anything that are gonna, happy to die in droves. No, that's not true. They are definitely, still people, and they, have their own fears and misgivings. But they do have a very special sense of pride in their work with the corporation. Which is something that should some capital soldiers find themselves I don't know, dishonored isn't the right word, but like they're found that they need something to prove. They've got something to prove to their management, to their commanding officers, to the other people, the shareholders. They will dedicate themselves to the cause. And there's actually a unit in the game called the Free Marines. And the Free Marines are a hodgepodge assortment of soldiers, veteran soldiers that basically are like, nah, we we have something to prove. Get us together and we'll get the mission done. They're like the special. They're like a potpourri of special forces, and they're very cool. They're a very neat force. Capital also has in the stories and in the hopefully the game will eventually get us there. They also are one of the only people who have like a true air force of jet bikes. The Shark Cavalry, which is Gray Shark and Purple Shark, plus the Orca, but that's not the important part. They are 1 and 2 man jet bikes that are super fast. They lay down heavy amounts of firepower, and they really do emulate the concept that Capital sees a nail and throws a very big hammer at it. But if they've got to take 2 or 3 swings to hit that nail, it's probably they would rather pull that hammer away and send in a new hammer tomorrow to do it than sit there and whack at it all day long. If you understand the metaphor. So Capital is I think that if you are like kind of in your other war games that you play, you like the concept of basics, like just good solid soldiers, I think Capital is going to probably be a good bet for you. They really do. They play by a lot of normal army tactics. Now they do have my one of my favorite units, and that is the Martian Banshees. So Martian Banshees, they've got these skull faceplate helmets. They fly around on jetpacks, but they are jetpack shock troops. And they wear bright red armor with skull faceplates. The whole concept of these guys is that you hear them coming a mile away, and when they get there, when they smash into your unit, several hundred pounds of armor and soldier coming in off the jetpack and just ramming into the opponents. And then, those who survive the initial onslaught look up and they see, these skull-faced armored, soldiers in their midst, ready to kill a bunch and then fly away again. I love that. I love the idea of the Martian Banshees. And so, Capital, they are such a great embodiment of what Capital prefers to do. Move fast, hit hard, show the world you mean business, and then get out of there. That is the Capital way. Next faction that will be represented in the Kickstarter is Bauhaus. Bauhaus are the very central block European feel. They are some of the best armored basic soldiers in the game. They run on an aristocracy based around a bunch of noble houses, and your nobility gives you more say as a shareholder. It's a very cool setup as far as how they've got it lined up. But it is also the soldiers in Bauhaus. They are they are a steady forward push. You are not going to see, yeah, they'll be able to dig their heels in and deal with a foe like from within the trenches and such, but most Bauhaus's tactics are, we've got heavy armor, so shrug off what you can, push forward, get them in range of our heavy guns, and just lay waste. I think for me, I think Bauhaus feels a lot like that kind of armor and perseverance feel that a lot of like Space Marine armies have in 40K, or like dwarves back in the fantasy. Yeah, we're skilled, we're tough, we've got all these toys, but our biggest strength is just being able to take a beating and keep pushing forward until either you give up or you're not there to stop us anymore. Within the Bauhaus forces, there's a bunch of different elite forces that get called upon. A couple of my favorites is I love Venusian Rangers. Venusian Rangers, I get something with guys that have skulls on their helmets. Venusian Rangers are heavily armored wilderness forces that are primarily designed to deal with hostile environments and find ways to circumvent them for the rest of the Bauhaus forces. I also love Jungle Commandos, but primarily the reason I love Jungle Commandos has very little to do with them as a troop, and more to do with the fact that they carry rotary shotguns, and I love the concept in a sci-fi game anyway of a Gatling gun that shoots shotgun shells. That's basically what these things are. They're great. There is one of the other forces within Bauhaus that kind of represents a different aspect of the always push forward, always be moving, and that's the I may butcher this because I do not know French. The Étoile Mortante, which is, I believe it's Dying Stars, is the quote for that, or the translation for that, and they are actually lightly armored close quarters fighting experts. They like to get in there, use their flexibility and their speed to their advantage, and surgically strike where they need to. In past editions of Warzone Mutant Chronicles, most of the Étoile Mortante were women. They were almost always sculpted as women. We are expanding that quite a bit, because there's nothing that says that they have to be women. They just need to basically be fast, scooty, fighty, and limber in order to kind of have that acrobatic feel. It does not, it doesn't mean that they have to be ladies for that to happen. It just means as long as they can do the job, they fit the role. The Bauhaus is also one of the only forces. Now, I can't speak as to when they'll show up, but I do love the old model, and I want Res Nova, and if I have my way, I'll get. If I get my way, I'll get them eventually. The Bauhaus Dragoons, they basically are elite forces that hang out with armored columns and tanks and other vehicular assets to give them some infantry support. And I love them. They're heavily armored. They, I believe they carry the Panzerknacker rifle, which is a high caliber rifle. But they wear these wolf-themed power helmets. They're the armor for their power armor. They wear this like wolf-themed helmet that I always thought was a cool touch. And now those old models, those old Dragoons are pretty old. I want to see a new version. I want to see Tom Mason's take on a Bauhaus Dragoon personally. The next faction, is probably one that, if not handled well as a company, can be a little stereotypical, a little culturally biased, and that's Mishima. So Mishima, they are a very traditional Asian themed mega corporation that has spread across the galaxy. So they're obviously not all from Asia. That wouldn't make much sense if you're in an interplanetary, megacorp. But they keep up those kinds of traditions, and I can't think of a single human soldier that has made it out of the Ashigaru stage. The Ashigaru are the conscripts, if you will, the basic corporate schmucks, and those who serve as an Ashigaru long enough, they may get drafted or picked to join one of the more elite squads. From the elite squads on forward, almost all of them carry around Kenpo and Kenjutsu swords, ceremonial blades that are used for when, that they have, officer ascension ceremonies or some kind of big political event, or if you've got to wear your dress uniform, you probably have your ceremonial blade by your side. But when it comes to Mishima, that's not just for looks. They are trained in how to use them, and they are lethal close combat fighters. Now, the reason why it's not just, they're the Asian faction, so they've got to have samurai swords. It's not just that, although I'm sure there was probably a lot of root to that back in the day. It does have a narrative reason. Mishima's primary territory is on Mercury, and Mercury, being the planet that's closest to the sun, being on the surface would cook you. No amount of terraforming is going to keep Mercury from being a scorching hot planet. They live the areas they live in are subterranean colony tunnels that climate controlled and all that, but it's tons and tons and tons of interweaving tunnels under the crust of Mercury. Well, in order to save power, a lot of these don't have lights, unless you happen to be in that area, kind of the motion detecting lights, that kind of stuff. But what that does is it means there's a lot of chances for right around the corner, there's my enemy, rather than across the field of battle. So the Mishima carry their swords ceremonially, but they are deadly with them when they inevitably turn one of those tunnels, turn a corner of one of those tunnels, and then bam, you're on top of your opponent. So there is a traditional reason, an actual narrative reason why those guys carry their swords, and it's not just because Asians need samurai swords. Within Mishima, there's all kinds of different forces, but I think my two favorite, one are the shinobi, which are kind of masters at taking advantage of cover and shadow. They're very, very fast, and they're very good at setting up ambush points for other forces to kind of push the enemy into. As far as one of my other favorite units from Mishima, there is a unit called the Deathbringer, and the Deathbringer is a class. It's a classification of soldier. So it's not just I am the Deathbringer. It would be I am Deathbringer, 117, or I am Deathbringer Steven, whatever you have as your designation. But these guys are basically like high tech assassins, high tech, like almost kind of ninja themed assassins. But they've got silenced machine pistols, blades. Some of them tap into like almost kind of extra, like somewhat supernatural powers. I dig them. Mishima's pretty cool. They're a very, very cool force. But it is something that you will need to keep in mind, that they have these swords. They are trained in these swords. There is a reason why some of their firearms are not quite as powerful as some of the equivalents across the other board, is because they've been trying to just basically cheaply equip their soldiers while focusing on training them to be the best swordsmen that they can be, so forth and so on. Next up is Imperial. Imperial is a fun faction made up of lots of little tiny bits, similar to like the colonization efforts of the United Kingdom way back when. It's lots of different aspects lumped together in one force. But there are definitely two main divisions within Imperial. There's the what we call kind of collectively the Berets, and that's going to be like your commonplace SAS special forces. Not commonplace, but like you might see them from several different types of countries. This style of soldier, the get it done, get in, get out, get it done kind of soldiers that devote themselves to a particular, maybe it's a particular technology or a particular role within their government, or something along those lines. The baseline Imperial soldiers, the beret soldiers, if you will, they have lots of different divisions within their clan, and each division is kind of responsible for a different aspect of warfare. So it's pretty cool there. The other half of the Imperial coin are the Wolfsbane clans. So Wolfsbanes Wolfbanes. These guys are going to be your highly stereotypical, Celtic and to a smaller degree, almost like Viking style soldiers. And very similar to Mishima, a lot of the Wolfbanes are equipped with swords or axes, and they are good at using them. They are lethal foes, and in fact, one of my favorite Imperial soldiers comes from the Wolfbane, and that is the Headhunter, which is exactly what it sounds like. Headhunters are just Billy badasses that pick a target and say, I want that guy's head on my wall, and they're more than capable of doing it. I dig those a lot. I think the other Imperial unit that I like a lot, you know what, I do like the Sea Lions. The Sea Lions are a kind of combat response force. They're an elite force that bring plasma carbines to the table. Plasma carbines are, they're in a world where technology has kind of fallen to almost like a diesel punk aspect. Having weapons that hurl balls of unstable plasma, that's a plus. The last of the corporations is probably also the most unique. The closest thing to not being a corporation, that's Cybertronic. Cybertronic are in a setting where computers and AI have been disallowed because of how the dark symmetry can corrupt them. This is a faction that says, nah, we figured the way around it. We've coded our way around it. And they still have computer networks. They still have AI forces. They've got cybernetic, or like mechanical augmentations on most of their soldiers. They are definitely a high-tech force in a world that is otherwise, or a setting that is otherwise not good with that kind of stuff. The big thing with Cybertronic, I don't want to spoil it because it's definitely going to be something we talk about in the future, but that narrative aspect of them not having to rely on walkie-talkies and radio messages and things, being able to actually use an internalized computerized thinking machine network is huge to how Cybertronic plays the game. Again, I can't get into it. I don't want to get into its specifics because things are still in playtest. we will be revealing more things in the future, but just keep that in mind that Cybertronic, they are linked to an internal network. A lot of them are networked to one another, and that will play out in the tactics of the game when you play Cybertronic. My two favorite Cybertronic units are, it's super easy. Like I can't even I can't even like say, wow, you know, maybe this or this one. I love Mirrormen. Mirrormen are close quarters, not necessarily close combat. I mean, they do have swords, but like they also have machine pistols, and they're good at like getting close to your opponent, but not necessarily stuck in with your opponent. But they are augmented to have this kind of like semi-reflective camouflage armor on them to help them get to where they're going, so they can deal with people. They're super cool, and I love the mentality of this, you know, this sort of shimmering image, almost like a predator from the movie, just sort of coming out of, you know, like you look, you know, your target walks in, you're looking around, and then suddenly something shifts, and then boom, you got a guy on top of you, this part robotic cybernetic soldier, you know, stabbing you and shooting a machine pistol at you. I dig Mirrormen. I think they're cool. But I think my favorite Cybertronic unit is the Attila Cuirassier. So the Attila, I believe it's the Mark III Attila. The Attilas are basically ABC, I think that's redundant, but ABC combat drone robots from Judge Dredd. So they're you know, 8 to 10 foot tall, heavy machine gun or heavy flamethrower carrying robots that, you know, obviously, you know, they're made of metal, they're made of robotics. They can take a beating. They're just not all that smart. And when it comes to some of the objectives in the game that you might need to be able to have your model figure out a puzzle with a leadership test or something like that, the Attilas are not there for that. The Attilas are there to kick down doors and lay waste to what's on the other side. The last of the Kickstarter factions, the ones that we're representing as far as part of that first wave of Kickstarter stuff, is within the Dark Legion. So let's talk about the Dark Legion. The Dark Legion split up into 5 forces under the different Dark Apostles, but there is an underlying dark cult. So there is a lot of soldiers that are found in the Dark Legion that you can field with any of the apostles. They're just kind of omnipresent. The different apostles, I'm actually going to do a countdown to the one that we're actually doing. You've got Demnogonus. Demnogonus is the apostle of corruption and decay. A lot of their stuff is acid, you know, dissolving weapons. Their dark symmetry spells are very big on, you know, making enemies sick and, you know, kind of premature decomposition, maybe explosively so. Mwawahe, which, because I've said it, I have to sing the song. Do 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 do. Mwawahe. Do 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 do. Mwawahe. All right. So Mwawahe is the god of madness, or the apostle of madness. He represents the utter confusion and nonsense and illogical fears and phobias that are out in the universe, where things just don't make sense. Glitches in the matrix, if you will. That's all Mwawahe's purview. And you know, Mwawahe soldiers are either things that were literally crafted from nightmares. You know, these like winged, clawed, tailed, slavering, you know, fangs monsters, or soldiers that have gone insane from fighting against Mwawahe's influence, and so now they scream, they give like almost like pseudo psychic tormented screams, mad prophets, bunch of cool stuff within the Mwawahe force. Then there is Samai. Samai is the apostle of shadows and deception. basically the spy apostle. This is the guy that no one knows what Samaya's really up to, but his forces show up where they need to show up. They deal with targets in their own special ways, normally from afar or at least from out of the shadows. Samaya also has the most apostle-based forces that can sort of just appear in your ranks, disguised as your own forces. Samaya is very sneaky. That's their big thing. And then you have the mother of the dark symmetry, Ilian. Ilian is very heavily weighted on the magical side of the dark symmetry. She is considered to be one of the strongest, like, politically, between the apostles. She is the one that connects probably the most the most whole with the dark symmetry, and her forces really do kind of rely on this sort of dark magic upgrading to them, these rituals that have made her basic soldiers, whereas almost everybody else uses undead legionnaires or altered soldiers that have been, like, corrupted. Ilian uses magically enhanced soldiers called Templars of Ilian, and they are, almost, with the exception of their assault rifles, they're almost like medieval knights that hit the table. She also has some of the coolest spells that make, like, within her forces, that make others do her bidding. She's definitely about control. Ilian is a very controlling apostle. Which brings us to the last apostle, and the first one that will actually have representation in the Kickstarter, and that's Algaroth. Algaroth is the father of murder. He's the murder lord. He's the warlord apostle. If it has to do with violence and bloodshed on the battlefield, Algaroth is all about it. He is the bloody-handed god of murder, or bloody-handed apostle of murder. This is the reason why he is our first choice. He's the most straightforward. What does your guys do? Well, we use some of our demonic magics to augment our guys, to get them into combat, to deal with our opponents, whether it's with guns, axes, chain axes, swords, claws, sharp sticks, gnawing on them, whatever. Algaroth knows how to put the enemy down, and they are the most numerous of forces, as far as, like, you're dealing with a world that has been thrown into war. It has strengthened Algaroth. Algaroth came here. Algaroth's forces came to our world, saw that it was, fully embroiled in war, and was like, yep, this place is perfect. So that's Algaroth. Now, that is all of the forces that are being represented in the Kickstarter initially, with the exception of there is going to be some Brotherhood advisors, or at least one Brotherhood advisor allowed to be part of the Kickstarter. But the other factions, whether it's the Brotherhood / Cartel or the other 4 Dark Apostles, they will happen. They are gonna happen as long as the game, profits and does well and gets where we're going. Now, obviously, if it does really well, they'll get there faster. But the whole point of this is to make the game have a strong base to begin with, and that's why the Kickstarter really starts with the mega corporations, a taste of the Brotherhood and Algaroth, because that's really the main players when it came to the narrative of the Second Corporate Wars. That's really who was involved before things started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is hopefully the concept of this game that we're going to be making. I didn't touch on them. The Lost Tribes of Eden, I mentioned them when I was doing the faction breakdown, but, like, as far as in the game, they are a minority amongst minorities. Like they are a sliver of a sliver. Um, that being said, I still want them. I still want them represented in Warzone Eternal. We just have to be realistic, and we've got to get there. The game has to succeed long enough for us to start introducing some of these models. The four Lost Tribes of Eden, we've got the Sons of Rasputin, which are the closest thing to a regular faction that comes out of the Poisoned Earth. They have the most advanced technology of the different Lost Tribes. They had the most to salvage from their territory. They are the most military and least faithful of the forces within the Lost Tribes, and they tend to be pretty tough. They tend to be kind of an anvil that you're gonna beat your hammer against. Then you have the Templars, not to be confused with Ilian's Templars. The Templars are basically they're like mutants that have not mutated because of the influence of their arc symmetry. They mutated because of just radiation and pollution and stuff on Earth. They're bald, they've got sharp teeth and claws. They're kind of a predatory human almost. They are specialists in their fields, and they have evolved to overcome the environmental hardship of Earth, of their Dark Eden, and they one of the things that make the Templars stand out is that they have a way of, how to put this, supporting one another by, not like a hive mind by any stretch, but the more of them are in an area, the stronger they tend to be. Then you have the Crescentian Brotherhood, or just Crescentia, named after the crescent area of civilization where humanity was born. The Crescentia see themselves as holy warriors that are kind of bent on a crusade to bless the rest of the world. They think that things will get better when they do. They despise the dark symmetry and are not too fans of the mega corporations for being basically sinners. They do like the Brotherhood. They think the Cardinal and his forces are top-notch examples of humanity, and they take to heart the concept of mastering the animal life all around them. And you see, so they have a lot of, like, cavalry and pack dogs, watchdogs. Obviously not regular dogs; it's all mutant creatures. But back in their day, they did have a mammoth, I think it was called Eclipse Cavalry, the Eclipsean something. Basically, it's a mutated elephant to be this giant warmount that they would bring to battle. So very, very cool. And then the last of the Lost Tribes is probably the weirdest, and that's the Lutheran Triad. They are kinfolk clans of extremely zealous believers in a prophecy that some, if not all of them, will be martyrs to bring back the sanctity of the world, to bring back a healthy Earth. Now, is that probably going to happen? Not really. But it does make these guys do some crazy stuff, and that includes cutting off most of their face and surgically creating this sort of blank, mouthless, noseless, earless, wide-eyed visage and they claim that this is like a blessing, a purification that lets them survive in the world, and that it makes them stronger by not being able to say the name of your enemy. So like literally, everything is all sewn up and surgically buffed out. But these guys, they do have the ability. They use sign language to talk to each other all the time, but they have at least a little bit of credence to their stories, to their traditions, because not only do they survive in this hellscape, but some of them will actually manifest what they call stigmata, and it lets them do miraculous things while they're living through these kind of mystic injuries. The Lutheran triad tribes are pretty rad, and that's basically it. As far as we talked about the Brotherhood have a bunch of advisors that go elsewhere. The cartel do the same thing, but through Doom Troopers. We talked about the different factions to give you a good, nice, brief overview to let you know what's coming, so you can start thinking about what to pay attention to when we release more information, or you start seeing models. Oh, speaking of models, I totally forgot. One of the things that I said I was going to show you, so for an upcoming video that we're going to do, I needed to paint some forces, so I painted some Necromutants. Let's see if I can get him to focus. Show me the Necromutant. Are you going to focus, buddy? Oh, he's not going to focus. Oh, wait, there we go. I had it. Never works. Never works when I want it to. All right. So this is a Necromutant with a Tormentor. And the Tormentor is a special Dark Legion flamethrower. Necromutants are sort of like the main non-disposable troop of the Dark Symmetry. They are humans that have been heavily mutated through Dark Symmetry energies into these sort of like 2 meter tall, hunchback, green skin monsters that can really no longer blend in with polite society. They are definitely devotees of the Dark Symmetry, and they normally carry Belzerak assault rifles or Tormentor flamethrowers. They are led by Centurions, which are just kind of slightly cooler versions of Necromutants. And they are the field commanding leaders. They're the ones that can bark orders even down to the baseline Dark Symmetry grunts, the Undead Legionnaires, which are exactly what they sound. They are bodies that have been dead enemy corpses that have been animated to serve as the cannon fodder for the Dark Legion. But yeah, so I get to paint some Necromutants and a Centurion, and right now, sitting over on my paint desk, his primer is drying, is a Razide, or as Alex actually, my boss actually calls them Razids. I would actually like to, you know what? Let's do that. If you have an opinion on whether or not it's Razide or Razid, put it in the comments. I would be interested, because I have not seen an official pronunciation guide anywhere. But I've gone the last 20 years calling them Razides. Alex has gone the last 20 years calling them Razids. Where do you sit? Do you call them Razides? Please don't. Don't add a third option. But I've got one drawing over there, so I can get started painting him this weekend. And he is a Razide armed with a Hellblaster, which is a sort of like kind of a monstrous mini rocket launcher. Like it shoots almost kind of like projected grenades. It's pretty cool. It's very, very cool. And when he's done, I'll get to show you guys. but I'm excited to get him on the field. Raysides are normally known for their heavy machine guns, so I'm kind of psyched to have one that doesn't do the heavy machine gun thing, that does, you know, the explosion aspect. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think it's gonna be cool. So that's the factions. That's the faction lowdown in a nutshell. Again, I wanted to give you the fast and loose because I didn't want to spend hours, you know, going through each individual troop. Not to mention, some of this stuff, as playtesters return information for the different units and such, there might be tweaks made. But this at least gives you a good idea of how these factions are probably going to, as far as like their mainstay, how that's going to roll up, how that's going to feel on the battlefield, or at least the concept behind what we put together. Aside from that, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, click on that Kickstarter, go ahead and get added, so when that launches, you'll get informed. Be safe, wear a mask when you need to, get vaccinated, get your boosters. Go out there, have fun, and play some games. We'll see you next week for a special Ask Me Anything with Alex about the Kickstarter itself.